June 13, 1968. Con Tum Province, Central Highlands, Vietnam. The fire base sat on a hilltop like a scab on green skin, surrounded by triple-strand concertina wire and sandbags stacked chest-high. Firebase Kate, 13 Green Berets, 40 South Vietnamese strikers, one 105mm howitzer, and a perimeter that was way too big for the number of men defending it. Captain John Kedenburg, 27 years old, Special Forces, A-Team Commander, walked the line at dusk and did math that didn't add up. 53 men to defend 300 meters of perimeter, 6 meters per man. In a proper defensive position, you wanted 1 meter per man, overlapping fields of fire, mutual support. This wasn't proper. This was suicide with extra steps. The numbers were bad. The intelligence was worse. The S2 briefing that morning had been clear, delivered by a lieutenant who looked like he should still be in college, pointing at a map with a stick like he was teaching geography. NVA activity in the area. Increased radio chatter, movement on the trails, a regiment, maybe more, massing in the jungle to the north, preparing for something. The Tet offensive had been 4 months ago, but the war hadn't stopped. If anything, it had intensified. The NVA were pushing harder, testing defenses, looking for weak points. Firebase Kate was a weak point. Everyone knew it. The firebase was isolated, 10 kilometers from the nearest friendly unit, accessible only by helicopter. No roads, no reinforcements that could arrive in less than an hour. If the NVA decided to hit them, help wouldn't arrive in time. Kedenburg had requested reinforcements. Request denied. Not enough men available. He had requested extraction, suggested abandoning the firebase, falling back to a more defensible position. Request denied. Firebase. Kate provided artillery support for operations in the valley. It was strategically important. Hold the firebase. Those were the orders. So they'd hold it. Kedenburg stopped at the northern bunker, where Sergeant First Class James Williams was checking the M60 machine gun for the 3rd time that day. Williams was old for Special Forces. 38, 2 tours in Vietnam, a 3rd tour in Korea before that. His hands were scarred from shrapnel and burns, his face weathered like old leather, his eyes the tired eyes of a man who'd seen too much and survived too long. He knew weapons the way some men knew women, intimately, every quirk and temperament and mood. The M60 was his baby, cleaned and oiled twice daily, belt-fed ammunition laid out in perfect loops, backup barrels staged and ready. "How's she looking?" Kedenburg asked. Williams patted the gun like it was a dog. "Ready. Got 3,000 rounds staged here, another 1,000 in reserve. Barrels are good. Headspace and timing checked. If they come, we'll give them hell." His voice was flat, matter-of-fact, Tennessee accent flattened by years of military service. Not bravado, just statement of fact. "When they come," Kedenburg corrected. "Not if. When." Williams nodded. He knew. They all knew. You didn't mass a regiment in the jungle for nothing. You massed a regiment to take something, and Firebase Kate was the only thing worth taking in this sector. It sat on high ground, controlled the valley approaches, provided fire support for 3 different operations. Take Firebase Kate, and you owned this section of the Central Highlands. The NVA knew it. Kedenburg knew it. The only question was when they'd come, not if. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and purple, beautiful in a way that felt wrong given what was coming. Kedenburg continued his walk, checking positions, talking to men, making sure everyone knew the plan. South Vietnamese strikers manned most of the bunkers, local militia, Montagnard tribesmen who'd allied with the Americans because the NVA had burned their villages. They were brave but inexperienced, farmers with rifles, not trained soldiers. The 13 Green Berets were scattered among them, 1 American per 3 or 4 strikers, providing leadership and expertise. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. Kedenburg stopped at the command post, a bunker dug into the hilltop, reinforced with logs and sandbags, radio equipment humming inside. His executive officer, Lieutenant Morrison, was monitoring the radio nets, listening to traffic from other fire bases, other units. Morrison was 23, looked 19, West Point graduate who'd volunteered for Special Forces because he thought it would be more interesting than leading a regular infantry platoon. He'd been right about that. "Anything?" Kedenburg asked. Morrison shook his head. "Quiet, too quiet. Nobody's seeing anything, but everyone's nervous. Something's coming." "Yeah, something's coming." Kedenburg looked at the map on the wall, marked with unit positions, enemy sightings, intelligence reports. The NVA regiment was out there, somewhere in the jungle to the north, maybe 5 kilometers away, maybe less. They'd move at night, march in darkness, hit at dawn when defenders were tired and visibility was poor. Standard tactics, effective tactics. Make sure everyone's awake tonight, full alert, no sleeping. Already passed the word. Kedenburg went back outside, checked the howitzer. The gun crew was preparing charges, stacking shells, calculating fire missions. The 105mm could reach out to 11 kilometers, drop high explosive rounds on target with reasonable accuracy. But it couldn't fire straight down. If the NVA got inside the wire, the howitzer was useless except as a very expensive club. "You guys ready?" he asked the gun chief, a staff sergeant from Alabama with arms like tree trunks. "Ready as we'll ever be, sir. Got illumination rounds staged, HE, Willie Pete, everything. We can shoot all night if we need to." "We'll need to?" The attack came at 0200 hours. No warning, no probing fire, no reconnaissance by fire, just sudden overwhelming violence that turned night into day and silence into chaos. Mortars first, 82mm rounds walking across the firebase in a pattern that showed careful reconnaissance and planning. The NVA had mapped the base, knew where the bunkers were, where the howitzer sat, where the command post was dug in, where the ammunition was stored. The rounds were accurate, landing inside the wire, cratering the ground, shredding sandbags, killing men in their sleep. The firebase erupted in fire and smoke and screaming. Kedenburg was in the command bunker when the first rounds hit. He'd been dozing in a chair, radio handset in his lap, never fully asleep, that combat sleep where part of your brain stays awake listening for danger. The first explosion threw him to the floor, sandbags collapsing, dust filling the air. He grabbed his rifle, his helmet, ran outside into chaos. Explosions everywhere, orange flashes lighting up the night, tracers crisscrossing the darkness like deadly fireflies, red and green, American and NVA, intersecting in patterns that looked almost beautiful if you didn't think about what they meant. The howitzer crew was trying to depress the gun barrel low enough to fire directly at the attackers, practically point-blank range, turning artillery into a direct fire weapon. South Vietnamese strikers were firing from the bunkers, AK-47s and M16 chattering, muzzle flashes strobing. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Then the mortars lifted and the ground assault began. 300 men. Later, intelligence would confirm it from body counts and prisoner interrogations and documents captured after the battle. 300 North Vietnamese Army regulars from the 24th Regiment, a unit with a reputation for discipline and ferocity, a unit that had fought at Dien Bien Phu, that had marched down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that had survived American bombing and artillery and napalm. Professional soldiers, not guerrillas, not farmers with rifles, soldiers who knew their business. They came from 3 directions simultaneously, a coordinated assault that hit the northern, eastern, and western sections of the perimeter at the same time. The southern side faced a cliff, impassable, 200-foot drop to rocks and jungle below, which meant the NVA could concentrate their forces on 3 sides. 300 attackers against 53 defenders. 6-to-1 odds. The kind of odds that ended with overrun positions and body bags and after-action reports marked classified. The eastern side went first. Kedenburg heard it on the radio, panicked voices speaking Vietnamese and broken English. They in wire! They in wire! Many VC! Many! Then the sound of grenades, of automatic weapons fire at close range, of men screaming, then static. The radio went dead. The eastern bunker was gone, overrun, everyone inside dead or captured. That fast, 30 seconds from first contact to silence. They're through on the east side, Morrison was shouting into the radio, trying to coordinate a response, trying to organize a counterattack, but there was no one to counterattack with. Every man was needed on the perimeter. Pull someone from one position, and that position collapsed. The fire base was stretched too thin, too few men covering too much ground. Kedenburg ran toward the breach, firing as he moved. He could see them now, shadows moving fast, low to the ground, professional soldiers who knew their business. Sappers had blown gaps in the wire with Bangalore torpedoes, long tubes of explosives that cleared paths through obstacles. Assault troops were pouring through, AK-47s firing from the hip, grenades flying. He emptied a magazine, dropped 2, maybe 3. More kept coming, always more, like trying to stop a flood with a bucket. The eastern bunker was being overrun. He could see muzzle flashes from inside it, could hear screaming, Vietnamese and English mixed together, the universal language of combat and death. Then silence. The bunker went dark. Everyone inside was dead. Kedenburg changed direction, ran toward the northern perimeter where Williams had the M60. If they lost that gun, they lost the fire base. The M60 was the only crew-served weapon they had, besides the howitzer, the only thing that could put out sustained fire, the only thing that could stop a massed assault. Williams was firing in controlled bursts, traversing the gun left and right, cutting down NVA soldiers as they came through the wire. 6-round bursts, standard doctrine, conserving ammunition while maintaining effectiveness. Spent brass piled up around his feet, glinting in the muzzle flash. Hundreds of casings creating a golden carpet. His assistant gunner, a young specialist named Rodriguez, was feeding belts, keeping the gun running, keeping the ammunition flowing. Bodies were stacking up in front of the position, the NVA climbing over their own dead to get at the bunker. Human wave tactics, overwhelming firepower with bodies, trading lives for ground. How much ammo? Kedenburg shouted over the noise, the continuous roar of gunfire and explosions that made normal conversation impossible. Half gone, Williams shouted back, not taking his eyes off the gun, not stopping his traverse. We're burning through it. Make it last. That gun is all that's holding them. The western side collapsed. Kedenburg heard it on the radio, panicked voices, then nothing. Static. The NVA had broken through there too, were inside the perimeter, fighting bunker to bunker, clearing positions with grenades and rifle fire. The fire base was being cut in half, defenders isolated, unable to support each other, fighting individual battles instead of a coordinated defense. This was it. This was how they died. Overrun on a hilltop in the middle of nowhere, bodies left for the jungle to reclaim, another fire base lost, another tactical defeat that would be explained away in briefings and press conferences. Kedenburg ran back to the command post, grabbed the radio handset, keyed it with shaking hands. Any station, this is Firebase Kate. We are being overrun. Request immediate air support, immediate reinforcement. How copy? Static. He tried again, adjusting frequency, hoping someone was listening. Firebase Kate to any station. We are in heavy contact. 300 plus enemy. We need help now. A voice crackled back. Calm, professional, the voice of a pilot who'd done this before. Kate, this is Spooky 3-1. We copy your traffic, inbound your location. ETA 15 minutes. Can you mark your position? Affirmative. We'll mark with strobe. Roger, hold on, Kate. We're coming. 15 minutes, 900 seconds. Kedenburg looked at his watch, the luminous dial showing 0217. He had to keep the firebase alive until 0232. Had to keep the NVA from taking the hilltop, from killing everyone, from turning this into another massacre that would be classified and forgotten, another statistic in a war that was measured in statistics. He grabbed his rifle, checked the magazine, ran back outside into the maelstrom. The northern bunker was still firing. Williams was still on the gun, still cutting down attackers, barrel glowing red from sustained fire. But Rodriguez was down, hit, slumped against the sandbags, eyes open and staring at nothing. Williams was feeding the belts himself now, one hand on the gun, one hand feeding ammunition, impossible task, doing it anyway because there was no choice. Kedenburg jumped into the bunker, grabbed the ammunition belt, pulled it straight, kept it from tangling. "I got it! Keep shooting!" Williams nodded, both hands on the gun now, firing steadily, professionally, like he was on a range instead of fighting for his life. The barrel was glowing red, overheating, paint burning off, metal expanding from heat. But he kept firing. The NVA were massing for another assault, shadows gathering in the darkness beyond the wire, organizing, preparing. Kedenburg could see them, dozens of them, maybe 50, preparing to rush the position in one overwhelming wave. If they took this bunker, if they silenced this gun, the firebase was finished. Game over. Everyone dies. "Here they come," Williams shouted. They came in a wave, screaming, firing from the hip, human wave assault, the tactic that had worked at Dien Bien Phu, that had worked at a dozen other battles, overwhelming firepower with bodies, accepting casualties to achieve objectives. Williams held the trigger down, continuous fire, violating doctrine, burning through ammunition, but this wasn't a time for doctrine. This was a time for maximum violence. Belt-fed ammunition pouring through the gun at 550 rounds per minute. The barrel was smoking, paint completely gone, metal glowing white-hot, hot enough to ignite wood, hot enough to burn flesh. Bodies fell in windrows, stacking up like cordwood, but more kept coming. Always more. The NVA had bodies to spare. They could afford to lose 50 men to take one bunker. The math worked for them. The gun jammed, belt twisted, round stuck in the chamber, failure to feed. Williams cursed, pulled the charging handle, cleared it, released the bolt. The gun fired again. 50 meters, 40. The NVA were closing, throwing grenades, launching RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades that left smoke trails in the darkness. An RPG hit the sandbags directly in front of them, exploded, showered them with dirt and shrapnel and pieces of sandbag. Kedenburg felt something hit his arm, hot pain, looked down and saw blood. Ignored it. 30 meters. 20. Williams was firing point blank now, couldn't miss, each burst dropping multiple attackers, bodies falling on top of bodies. Then they broke. The assault wave faltered, stopped, retreated. Survivors pulled back, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead. Dozens of bodies in front of the bunker, piled 2 and 3 deep in some places. Temporary reprieve. They'd regroup and come again. They always came again. Kedenburg checked his watch. 0225. 7 minutes until air support. 7 minutes to hold. An eternity in combat. A lifetime compressed into 7 minutes. The South Vietnamese strikers were falling back, abandoning positions, running toward the center of the firebase. Kedenburg couldn't blame them. They were militia, farmers with rifles, men who'd signed up to defend their villages, not to fight a regiment of NVA regulars in a pitched battle on a hilltop. Facing professional soldiers, facing human wave assaults, facing certain death was beyond what they'd signed up for. But every position they abandoned gave the NVA more room to maneuver, more angles to attack from, more of the perimeter to exploit. "Rally them!" Kedenburg shouted at the Vietnamese lieutenant, a young man named Nguyen who'd been trained by the Americans, who spoke English with a French accent. "Get them back on the line." Lieutenant Nguyen tried, shouting in Vietnamese, grabbing men, physically pushing them back toward the bunkers. Some went, shamed into returning. Most didn't, fear overriding shame, survival instinct overriding duty. The perimeter was shrinking, collapsing inward like a dying star. Soon they'd be fighting from the command post, backs against the cliff, nowhere left to retreat, making a last stand that would be remembered by no one. Williams was changing the barrel on the M60, hands moving fast despite the heat, despite the metal hot enough to burn through gloves, through skin. He used the asbestos mitt, grabbed the carrying handle, twisted, pulled the old barrel off, dropped it. The barrel hit the ground, hissed, set a sandbag smoldering. He grabbed a spare barrel, slammed it in, twisted, locked it. "Last barrel," he said, voice hoarse from shouting, from breathing cordite smoke. "This one burns out. We're done." "Then make it count." The NVA came again. Different tactic this time. No human wave, no screaming charge. Small groups, fire and maneuver. Professional infantry tactics straight from the manual. One group would lay down suppressive fire while another advanced. Then they'd switch, the advancing group providing cover while the first group moved. Leapfrogging forward, using cover, using terrain, minimizing exposure. Harder to kill, harder to stop. Smarter. Williams fired in short bursts, conserving ammunition, picking targets, making every round count. Kedenburg fed the belt, counted rounds mentally. Maybe 800 left, maybe less, not enough for another sustained assault. An NVA soldier made it to the wire, 10 meters from the bunker. He had a satchel charge, canvas bag filled with explosives, swinging it by the rope handle, preparing to throw. Williams swung the gun, fired a burst. The rounds caught him in the chest, knocked him backward. The satchel charge fell from his hands, detonated where he stood, blew a hole in the wire, blew a hole in the ground, blew him into pieces too small to identify. More NVA rushed through the gap, exploiting the breach, turning one man's sacrifice into tactical advantage. Williams fired, traversing, cutting them down. But more kept coming. The gap was a breach, a wound in the perimeter that kept bleeding attackers. Kedenburg grabbed grenades from his harness, threw them at the gap, trying to seal it with explosives and shrapnel. The grenades detonated, bodies flying, limbs separating, but didn't stop the flow. The NVA were inside the wire now, fighting hand-to-hand with the strikers, bayonets and rifle butts and knives, close quarters combat where training and experience mattered more than numbers. The fire base was dissolving into chaos. No lines, no positions, just men killing each other in the darkness, primal and savage and desperate. He checked his watch. 0231. 1 minute. 60 seconds. He could hear the aircraft now. AC-47 gunship, Spooky. The sound of 4 radial engines, old World War II transport converted into flying death. 3 7.62mm miniguns mounted in the side door, each capable of firing 6,000 rounds per minute, 18,000 rounds per minute total. 300 rounds per second. The sound of salvation. If they could hold for 1 more minute. 60 seconds. Kedenburg counted them down, firing his rifle, killing an NVA soldier who'd made it to the bunker, killing another, counting seconds between shots. The NVA heard it too. They knew what was coming. They'd faced Spooky before, knew what those miniguns could do, knew that staying in the open when Spooky arrived meant death. They pushed harder, desperate to take the fire base before the gunship arrived, before the miniguns turned the hilltop into a killing field. They threw everything at the northern bunker, the last strong point, the last position still holding, RPGs, grenades, rifle fire, everything. The sandbags were disintegrating, the bunker collapsing, but Williams kept firing, barrel glowing, gun shaking in his hands from the heat and the recoil and the sustained fire. Kedenburg fed the belt, hands bleeding from rope burns, from hot brass, from shrapnel cuts, not caring, just feeding ammunition, keeping the gun running. 500 rounds left. 400. 300. 200. Spooky 3-1, this is Kate. We're marking our position with strobe. Kedenburg pulled a strobe light from his harness, infrared, visible only through night vision goggles. He held it up, pointed it at the sky, pressed the button. The light strobed, invisible to the naked eye, bright as a beacon through NVG. North side is friendly, everything else is hostile. Danger close, fire for effect. Copy, Kate. Beginning run. Keep your heads down. The gunship banked overhead, invisible in the darkness, only the sound of engines giving away its position, circling like a predator, lining up the shot. Then the miniguns opened up. The sound was like nothing else in the world, a deep mechanical roar, like tearing canvas amplified 1,000 times, like the world ending. The tracers looked like solid red lines connecting the aircraft to the ground. Every fifth round a tracer, the others invisible but just as deadly. 6,000 rounds per minute per gun. 18,000 total. The math was simple. The result was devastating. The NVA positions erupted, dirt and vegetation and bodies disintegrating under the onslaught, the sheer volume of fire turning earth into moon surface, turning men into mist. The assault broke. The NVA retreated, running, abandoning the attack, leaving equipment, leaving wounded, leaving everything in their desperation to escape the killing zone. The miniguns followed them, traversing across the hillside, cutting down anyone who moved, anyone who ran, anyone who was too slow or too unlucky. It was slaughter, clinical, mechanical, impersonal, necessary. Kedenburg watched, felt nothing, no satisfaction, no relief, just exhaustion, just the knowledge that they'd survived another minute, another hour, another night. The gunship made 3 passes, expending all its ammunition, 51,000 rounds total, then climbed away, engines fading into the distance. Kate, Spooky 3-1. We're Winchester, heading home. Another bird inbound, ETA 10 minutes. You need medevac? Affirmative? Multiple casualties. Roger. Stay alive, Kate. Help is coming. Kedenburg walked the perimeter as dawn came, grey light revealing the damage, revealing the cost. Bodies everywhere. NVA dead piled in front of the northern bunker, 40 or 50 of them. Hard to count, hard to tell where one ended and another began. Bodies torn apart by the M60, by the miniguns, by grenades and artillery. The eastern bunker was gone, collapsed. 2 Americans and 5 strikers dead inside, buried under logs and sandbags. The western bunker was abandoned, equipment scattered, blood trails leading away. The howitzer was damaged, barrel bent from a direct RPG hit. Useless now, expensive scrap metal. The fire base looked like the end of the world, like the apocalypse had come and gone and left only ruins. Williams was sitting against the sandbags, smoking a cigarette, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold it. The M60 sat next to him, barrel warped from heat, receiver cracked, feed tray bent. The gun was dead, burned out, fired its last round, gave its last measure. 3,000 rounds expended, maybe more. Kedenburg sat down next to him, accepted a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands, inhaled smoke that tasted like cordite and death. We held, Williams said, voice flat, emotionless. We held. How many you think we got? Enough. Kedenburg looked at the bodies, at the carnage, at the price paid in blood and steel. Intelligence would count them later, write reports, analyze tactics, draw lessons. He didn't care. They'd held the fire base. That's all that mattered. They'd held. The medevac helicopters came at dawn, Hueys dropping through morning mist, rotors beating the air, kicking up dust and smoke. They loaded the wounded, loaded the dead, wrapped in ponchos, anonymous green bundles. Kedenburg stayed along with the other Green Berets who could still fight, who weren't wounded badly enough to evacuate. They'd hold until reinforcements arrived, until the fire base could be properly garrisoned or abandoned. Orders were orders. The final count came 3 days later, delivered by the same lieutenant who'd given the intelligence briefing, who looked even younger now, who'd seen the aftermath. 53 defenders, 300 attackers, 87 NVA confirmed dead in front of the fire base, probably more dragged away, probably another 50 or 60 wounded who died later. 13 Americans wounded, 2 killed. 23 South Vietnamese strikers wounded, 7 killed. Firebase Kate held. Mission accomplished. Another line in another report. John Kedenburg received the Distinguished Service Cross, second highest award for valor, 1 step below the Medal of Honor. The citation talked about extraordinary heroism, about leadership under fire, about refusing to yield ground. Williams received the Silver Star. The other Green Berets received bronze stars with V devices for valor. The South Vietnamese strikers received nothing, their service unrecorded, their courage forgotten, their names lost to history. That's how it worked. That's how it always worked. A year later, Kedenburg was dead. June 13th, 1969. Exactly 1 year after Firebase Kate. Killed in another firebase, another battle. Another impossible situation where he refused to retreat, refused to abandon his men, refused to accept defeat. He was 28. Williams survived the war, went home to Tennessee, worked as a machinist for 30 years, died in 1998 at age 68 from lung cancer, too many cigarettes, too much Agent Orange. He kept the burned-out barrel from the M60, mounted it on his wall in his garage, never explained to anyone what it meant, what it represented, what night it came from. June 13th, 1968. 13 Green Berets and 40 South Vietnamese strikers held off 300 enemy soldiers using 1 machine gun, 1 howitzer, and a refusal to quit. They held because someone had to. They held because the alternative was unacceptable. They held because that's what special forces did. When the odds were impossible, when the situation was hopeless, when everyone else would run, they stayed and fought. Not for glory, not for recognition, not for medals or citations or mentions in history books, just because it was their job, just because their brothers needed them, just because retreat wasn't an option. 53 men on a hilltop, 300 attackers, 1 machine gun that fired until it died. And a night that lasted forever but ended with the firebase still standing, still flying the American flag, still held by men who understood that courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about being terrified and holding the line anyway because someone has to, because retreat isn't an option, because some positions, some principles, some brothers in arms are worth dying for, because in the end, all you have is the man next to you and the ground beneath your feet and the decision to hold or run. And they held, against all odds, against all logic, against all reason. They held.